I have here Adnan Ahmed, who is Head of Technology at Citibank, Pakistan. And today we're going to talk about financial services and the trends of financial services, or perhaps the areas of financial services pertaining to Pakistan and how financial services has been doing. Adnan, you've been around the block for a couple of years here in the financial services scene. Makes you a sort of a at least a subject matter analyst on a few things, especially the core banking. You've gone through about 2 or 3 core banking implementations. Much talked about, right? I mean, everybody has to buy it. There are local vendors available. The local vendors who have been providing services to banks in Pakistan for a long period of time, until this emerging trend of we're going to get international core banking applications into the market. I don't know who introduced it, but the problem that we saw afterwards was it wasn't really, we didn't really see star implementations for a long time. Why do you think implementations fail in these things? I mean, what's the mindset of banks in Pakistan due to which these core banking implementations, either they take an enormous amount of long time, eventually they do get implemented, they either get shelved, and why was this not happening perhaps in the days of early 90s and 80s, where I'm sure even at that time there was some sort of an automation happening from a high level perspective on a core banking perspective. I'm talking about Unibank, I'm talking about PyBus, right. I'm talking about Autosoft. I mean,
Autosoft, BankSmart, right?
These 3 vendors effectively sold their solutions to the region. I mean, they sold it in Africa, they sold it in Bahrain, they sold it in a few places in the Far East as well. So they were enriched. I mean, they had some sort of a capacity. What's happening?
No, absolutely. I think they had quite a fair amount of market. I think if you just to tell a story, probably about 20 years ago, when my father used to work for one of the larger banks, one of the top 5. I think they were probably one of the first banks who put 3 ATMs in their branch network in Karachi, and those ATMs were with branches through the wall kind of ATMs. And the way those ATMs worked was you would go with the card, and the value of what you could withdraw and what you had withdrawn was actually on the card. So when you put it in, take the cash out, so that was the way they chose to work. And obviously one of these this bank didn't have a centralized core banking system, didn't have real time branch connectivity, all of the good things you need for alternate channels ATMs. So that's the way they chose to do this. Now you fast forward early 2000, right? All of a sudden there's this activity in the market. The government, the central bank has deregulated the market. There's a lot of activity, 40 odd commercial banks, and suddenly everybody wanted ATMs. Obviously you could feel them, touch them, see them. Everybody wanted internet banking. For example, everybody wanted real-time banking. Everybody wanted to do their centralized processing. And this picked up space primarily because I think, again, one of the big 5 really kind of went with an international package, did the implementation, started doing the implementation, took them eons, finally they got through.
Do you think it was worth it? Do you think did they have the right need to go to an
Absolutely. I don't think there's a doubt that it was not worth it. It could have been done better, faster, cheaper, obviously all of those good things. But I think absolutely it was worth it. Look at the market today. You can walk anywhere, take money out through an ATM. You can go to any bank. I think almost any bank, they have some form of internet banking. You can do your account balance, do your statement, even do fund transfers. You can do fund transfers across the bank now, through one of the switches. So I think from a consumer perspective, it's definitely been worth it. Could it have been done better? Absolutely.
Now they say the real benefit of core banking application or innovation of technology in a financial services institution is primarily, बहुत सारी reasons हो सकते हैं, but it primarily boils down to 2 strong reasons. One is their customer retention, because naturally they're dealing with that, like you said, 39 other odd banks in the market.
Right.
And at the same time, the growing needs, sustenance of growing need of customers to keep their customers satisfied by coming up with new ideas, with new products. But quite frankly, I don't think the banks here are utilizing core banking towards their advantage. You and I must have heard a gajillion times CEOs and CEOs of banks talk about cross-pollination. Maybe they read it somewhere in some article, but they love talking about cross-pollination. If a customer walks up into a branch and the cashier has every single information about that customer's demographic, and then the cashier can serve as a sales agent to say, look, if you have this, would you like to buy this? Would you like to buy this? And X, Y, and Z. हुआ नहीं ऐसा,
hasn't happened.
क्यों नहीं हुआ? KYC का डेटा भी बहुत ज़्यादा स्टेट बैंक ने अपना जो है सख्ती कर दी, वो भी कलेक्ट होना शुरू हो गया, कोर बैंकिंग इम्प्लीमेंटेशंस भी हो गई, सक्सेसफुल भी हो गई, प्रेस रिलीजेस भी हो गई, तस्वीरें भी खींच गई, मगर ये नहीं हुआ.
Yeah, but I think just doing a core banking in implementation and getting all of your customers and accounts and transactions onto a system doesn't necessarily translate into being able to cross sell from the customers from the products that you have and the customer profile you have. I mean, I think look at the international banks. Look, for example, look at my bank. We have a whole analytics kind of warehouse, CRM behind all of our major systems, which actually allow us then to cross-sell, do segmentation. You have a card customer, you cross-sell, a number of mortgage loans, retail products, investment products, etc. But the other banks necessarily have not been able to, I think, go that way. They have done the core banking implementation. They thought just doing the core banking implementation would allow them to cross-sell, but you just can't cross-sell if you have a core banking system. You need to have a warehouse, perhaps. You need to have a CRM system. You need to have a team. You need to have a product. You need to, you need to have people sitting there and thinking we need to cross-sell. Cross-selling just won't come just because you have a core banking system.
And above all, you have to have the right mindset. Now that I made this investment, I want to capitalize it. In your bank, most of the people are lucky because they're getting this mandate or they're getting this burst of intelligence from their think tanks across the globe. I mean, that's the beauty of this bank. However, the irony is that your bank might not very well be able to capitalize on a larger set because this risk department would only allow certain products to be introduced in the market. The larger banks, the top 5 banks in Pakistan, are exposed to far more consumers in the agri and
absolutely in segments that we would never go into.
Absolutely. So the creativity had not really come in.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another point. You just said analytics. That's a great point. Business intelligence. I think the mandate from State Bank of Pakistan was thou must have a business intelligence tool. As a result, I think 19 out of 40 banks had bought a particular world-class system. I really don't think they're using it because if they were using it, then they wouldn't ask the same information over and over again. Each time I go and open a new account, that information should have already been there.
Absolutely.
So clearly, I mean, what's the role of business intelligence there? I mean, what's happening?
Discipline. It takes discipline to build. Just having a BI tool again is not going to, do wonderful things for you. Just by bringing in high-paying consultants from the outside and doing the implementation one time is not going to make it happen. I mean, you need sustained effort and you need discipline really to go in that direction where you are able to, for example, walk into a branch of any bank. And if you are a retail customer, if you have a current account, for example, and now you want an asset product or you want an investment product, you don't have to go on repeating the same information about NIC and phone number and your demographics over and over again. It should just get, picked up. I think we've lacked the discipline in the financial market to really move in a sustained way in this direction. So,
how does this work from a compliance perspective? State Bank asked, the banks would buy. The banks would show proof of purchase, and then that's it. Do you think the role of State Bank is done afterward? I'm sure they had a method to the madness that if you were purchasing, X, Y, and Z, if you have to have business intelligence capability in you, I'm sure they're asking for daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly reports. How are those reports getting jumbled?
Well, actually, that's one aspect of it. I mean, the aspect that State Bank is interested in is the KYC data, right? And that's bare basic KYC information such as what is your income, how many transactions will you do in a month, what profession are you in, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basic KYC information that allows one to pick up the kind of activity that you would potentially do in your account. So that piece is in there, but that again doesn't necessarily translate into the sort of the analytics, the intelligent data that you want in order to offer either new customers to the bank, new products to the customer, or come up with new products or cross-sell.
Because really, KYC compliance mandate could have actually helped banks cross-pollinate as well. I mean, it's all KYC, isn't it?
They could have, well, it's essentially you're asking customers for more information and then building up on that, right?
Sure.
So, banks could have chosen to do that.
I mean, I think the saddest thing that I see is a couple of large banks are actually owned by some fairly decent sized groups. Now, these groups own multiple other companies. From the
insurance
constructions to insurance to airlines to, of all, and and cross-pollination would have helped these banks tremendously as compared to other banks that are, that are individuals, that are owned by a group of individuals. I mean, these are corporations that actually would love to. I mean, I think the whole method would have been, whenever the first time I heard a larger group buying a bank, I realized I actually thought that the real value to them would be that they can now use the bank to cross-pollinate their product lines. The product lines in the construction industry, in the airline industry, in the hospitality industry, in the insurance industry.
Somehow that hasn't
that
happened.
didn't happen.
I don't know how it would, but you would expect it would, or it should, yeah. But I think the closest we've come to probably is to sell insurance to retail customers or to credit card customers.
I mean, what does it take for somebody to walk into a bank and actually, for the cashier to look at the information and say the guy is a corporate individual, he's a vice president at a private firm. What does it take for the cashier? I mean, how much would it take for the cashier to just say, look, I'm giving you a coupon to fly on this particular airline for 25% less because look, my group owns the airline.
Yeah, I know, it'll be amazing if you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, and you see banks like Fidelity doing it in the West. You see many other banks in Malaysia doing it. So, from a technology perspective, we both are technologists. Instead of hasty generalization or instead of oversimplifying things, really it all comes down to one big gigantic cube.
Yeah.
Where this data comes along and you tie it to a customer, and
the technology behind it, the system you can buy, you can get the consultants, you can get the technology, you can put it into place. But at the end of the day, you have to be disciplined, you need to have the team, you need to have the processes, you need to have the mindset really to then use that technology to do stuff. The technology isn't going to do the stuff for you.
Most of our CXOs of banks are actually, they have worked at reputable institutions outside Pakistan. That goes for the CIOs as well. That goes for many senior executives that we have in the banking industry today. Not all of them have been homegrown by Pakistan, although Pakistan has actually served as the biggest breeder of bankers all over the world.
Absolutely.
For major banks, much like yourselves and others. But leave that aside. How come they didn't bring that perspective here when they were coming back home to work at and in their homeland after living abroad and working with international banks?
I think they did, but I mean, you have to look at it this way. I mean, all of this has come about in what, 7, 8 odd years, I think.
Sure.
10, I don't know, if you count the early ones. So, I mean, we've had to sort of grow, ground up, right? So there was the PIBUS Unibank world, decentralized branches having their own databases and doing their own thing, into a centralized model where some of the managed service providers, for example, are doing the core banking operations and the 24/7 stuff. So I think we've had to grow pretty quickly in the last 10 years, and now that we have this sort of the foundation to doing all of these good things, potentially in the next 5-10 years, this is the direction in which the financial services industry could move or should move.
I think would be a more pertinent thing, because I mean the last topic that I had to discuss today is mergers and acquisitions. I mean, naturally there will have to be one. It is happening as well. It's happening at a slower pace naturally because of the economy going south. And I think from in the financial services industry, most of the acquisitions would be a liabilities merger as opposed to an asset merger. Let's just reduce liabilities and join hands together. Either way, how do you see the role of IT playing in the mergers and acquisitions? Does it get really complicated in terms of licensing assets, or especially core banking integrations? What's your experience in this? I mean, and what do you foresee?
I don't really necessarily have a direct experience in doing a M&A integration, platform migration. I would imagine in Pakistan, with all of the banks having one, core banking solution, or the other, I would imagine the migration is just as simple as being again disciplined, having the process, having the team in place, and actually doing it. I don't think you need any new technology to really do that stuff. Same goes, for example, for your infrastructure, for your servers, for your data rooms, for your network communication. I don't think technology is the real issue. I think it's just you have to approach it with that mindset and that sustained discipline to really bring the two together. I mean, I think there's been one merger so far. I don't think the technology really was a challenge as far as that merger went. I think there are a couple in line for now. I don't think technology is going to be the challenge. It's just
do you think there's a lot of brain drain happening?
People
a
going
lot
outside.
of people going outside, people getting, there has been a lot.
There was a lot of brain drain, right? For a number of years.
At least 3-4 years was on top notch.
Yeah, but I don't know if I don't think the market is that I don't think it has picked up yet in Middle East, in GCC, where a lot of people were going.
You don't have any problems in hiring at this point. If you decide to hire and add up to your team, you don't have any problem in hiring at this point.
I don't think I would have a problem. I think I think there are plenty of people you can use. Good people, I think you can hire right now. So
that's good. So that means we actually do have a brain, a capacity to actually handle. I think it's what you keep on saying is the mentality. I mean, we just completely lack in that mentality to grow, the banking into leaps and bounds, which we've seen the West doing. Now the reports from Kennedy Consultants or Deloitte and others keep on saying that, look, if financial services is to grow, it's gonna have to grow outside of it's gonna have to go into the emerging markets, and this and Africa is actually the emerging market. So having said that, what's your take on this? I mean, do you think you would see a lot of more international banks coming down to Pakistan and actually buying the local banks here, and because obviously that's the best way to secure a license and start cooking, with this caveat that RBS was up for sale.
I don't think I'm necessarily a banking industry analyst or expert, but I would hardly imagine a foreign player coming into Pakistan, for example, right now, given our growth rate, given our GDP, given our forecast, all of the sort of the difficult things related to the economy. I doubt if a foreign player will come in. However, I think from an emerging market perspective, I think an exciting thing that's happening is the mobile banking, right? P2P payments. Telenor has done a launch with the microfinance bank. I know the other operators are also looking to get into the game. I think that's something that's very exciting with the mobile operators kind of trying to get a piece of the financial services industry.
Do you see our banks going outside to those markets in Africa and actually opening up their branches there and starting business there, realizing that there might be saturation here? I mean, 40 banks, in a country of our size.
Difficult to say. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I can't imagine a Pakistani bank, for example, going into Africa and trying to tap into that market here. I mean, a couple of the big banks, right, the top 5 have branches in.
Because your telcos have done that, right? Your telcos, our telcos do have presence in Africa.
Yeah, but they have come in from the outside, right? They're not homegrown telcos. I think the only homegrown telco we had kind of died, right? And the other one got bought out. So, but the other 3 telcos really came in from the outside, so they were already in that market, right?
All right, last segment. They're saying that the latest trends that are sort of the savior for the financial services industry, aside from going into the emerging markets or the global banking, as they call it, is mobile banking, as you've rightly put, mobile money. Very important. I mean, one would figure that it should have been here by now. It's been in Philippines for the last 9 years, for God's sake.
Right.
Self-service banking, smaller branches, and more power to the banks. I mean, I still remember I walked into a Fidelity branch 13 years ago, and I went through the entire 5 or 6 transactions that I had to do because I've been putting off that trip for a long time, and none of this, throughout this duration, I was there for about half an hour. I did not actually meet the person over the counter. There were kiosks, and I was able to get those. Naturally, I'm not saying this will start to happen in Pakistan right away, but we've seen examples in Chile where agri-financing was actually done over kiosks, and instead of having a lot of text, because the farmers would come in, they would have pictures to navigate, and they would have one person helping them through. That person, that person would still be far more of a cost saving as opposed to 19 people in a particular branch.
Yeah.
Servicing the customers. So and the last, certainly not the least, as they say. So we've talked about mobile banking. You're saying that's coming up. Yeah, a couple of telcos are getting into the play. Mobile money, so far I'm not seeing any single sign of it. Yeah, I mean,
it was a limited launch. I think Mobi tried to do something with the Genie product, right? Didn't really pick up, or I don't know if they really didn't really go, I think, where they wanted to go.
And I think I think the problem, unless you think otherwise, I think the problem with that was improper marketing. You didn't market it well. I mean, we belong to a society where tangibility is everything. If you can't touch and feel something, like you said, very well said about the ATMs, it's worthless. We still see vendors fighting the battle of services versus software and hardware, because hardware you see and software is
services you can't.
Services like whatever, And naturally, we've got vendors out in this country since the 50s, and they have made the companies habitual of getting services for free. And naturally, now even if they ask So, well, before this wasn't really the case. Abhi aisa kyun ho raha hai? Why are you asking for services that was supposed to be free?
Right.
So, so those challenges still remain. So, self-service banking we talked about, still nothing really happening in Pakistan, at least from a self-service perspective. I know smart branches was coming up, like
it was, but I think one of the challenges of doing these high-tech kind of stuff in Pakistan is the labor cost, right? I mean, the labor cost here is so low. You put in technology, costing whatever x dollars, and then you have the sort of the low labor workforce here. So it doesn't necessarily make that rational economic sense for doing so.
Sure.
But it could be interesting. If
maybe that's why BI didn't take up, because people said, well, I'll just hire a 15,000 rupee engineer to do all kinds of queries for me. Why do I have to do
Microsoft
BI?
Excel and MIS and everybody's happy, and you just get on it. But you know what? One of the concepts obviously of smart branches being able to do your own thing without necessarily having a human teller interact with or a loan officer. I mean, if you look at P2P mobile banking, for example, same concept. You can walk into any franchise outlet in a major metro area, load up the money on your phone, and be able to transfer it to anybody else. And if you look at the way SMS, for example, has picked up 10, 15 years ago, I think there was no SMS culture, there was no texting culture. Now even my driver is texting, my mother texts, So everybody's done it. So if people can pick up to learn to text, for
then
example,
they can transfer money.
Exactly, they can transfer money with whatever,
and
doing one or two button clicks.
And I don't even see a whole lot of government influence in this. Whereas in other countries, especially with the mobile money, government was usually the first one to come in and say, look, join hands with the corporations and say, look, we need to do something about this. Because but naturally it helps them, right?
Yeah, but the state bank in this case was extremely proactive. Came out with some great guidelines, clear guidelines. Here is what's doable, here is what you can't do, bring the telco and the bank together. So I think that was something really proactive in the state bank. Absolutely.
Or perhaps catching up on the rightful trend.
Well, I think they learned from probably Indonesia. I think from some of the African countries which were already doing these P2P kind of implementations. The Philippines, I think. So I think so they kind of picked up from there and then said, all right, let's have these regulations before these these operators start doing it, or these technology companies start coming in outside and pitching the solution.
Or perhaps even they were, and they realized that if you don't act now,
absolutely,
they'll get beaten up.
Yeah.
IT platform sharing, they say it's one of the most biggest and most important aspects of financial services in the next 5 years. If banks would not start to get an open mindset of start sharing their IT portfolio and keep on rebuilding infrastructure of their own, we're going to die out. It's as simple as that. That's at least that's the research from Kennedy Corporation. So what do you think about that? I mean, this is a country where outsourcing bhi aaj nahi chal rahi. Works. It worked for a little while. It was that little engine that could. It worked for a little while. It died out, and nobody even said rest in peace on it. Outsourcing is there probably on a smaller level, perhaps at your printer's level and whatnot. But Merrill Lynch entire outsourcing deal belongs to a company. It's a huge bank, and I'm sure it had sensitivities towards it. I'm sure there was no concern new that Merrill Lynch had that our banks wouldn't have. Somehow those got catered. Now, Merrill Lynch did not really just do this overnight. They actually assembled the right level of data and then invited 5, 6, 7 corporations to come in and work with them on this, and then sort of slipped into it.
And also had the right service providers, right?
Sure. But what I'm trying to say is not necessarily will the service provider be available in Pakistan. You can get international service providers. The international service providers would not come in until the banks would not show openness.
Yeah.
So really, in this case, it's not really a catch-22 at all. Forget the local service providers. The local service providers can then serve as a local arm for these international companies to come in and service, because naturally they're not going to start hiring. Either they'll buy smaller companies in Pakistan to provide that service to the customer, or they will hire. Either way, the services will be provided locally by these international service providers.
Yeah, but somebody's got to show a real cost-benefit analysis around it, A, and B, really overcome that sort of mind culture. I have an internal IT staff, and
I actually think that the senior executives at banks probably do not have the the right muscle to ask the CIO, why are you not outsourcing? And CIO is saying, if nobody is asking me, why would I outsource?
Well, the CEO could potentially ask that question and be extremely direct if there was a real cost-benefit analysis around it, clearly showing costs going down by whatever 25%. I don't know, outsourcing versus keeping it in-house. I'm sure people would be happy to do it. So
yeah, but see, my problem is I don't think there is any KPI defined for a CIO to say, if you save me this much cost, I will do X, Y, and Z. We will open these new fronts, and for you can grow in the bank or whatever. See, the CIO is getting paid that my branch should not be down. Bas, khatam.
Yeah.
But I think the KPI is not really how much money will you save for me this year. Well, I'm not going to buy hardware. Okay, great. I mean, but that's just not working.
Yeah.
So if this trend is applicable for this is a global trend that they're saying that it has to follow. The platform sharing needs to happen.
Yeah.
How do you suppose this can remotely happen in Pakistan? Do you think the State Bank of Pakistan would be okay in platform sharing for multiple banks coming onto a single hub? I mean, they're coming in on OneLink, right? OneLink is an example. NIFT is an example. Do you think NIFT and OneLink, more of these things can happen on IT?
I don't think the State Bank would have any. I mean, even now, one of the banks, for example, one of the larger banks, right? They have an entire outsourced 24/7 operations around the core banking system to.
But nobody followed. They were the only ones.
Oh,
now
it's too expensive. It's too expensive, yeah.
The similar service provider would have opened up more channels,
yeah.
right? Or other service providers would have jumped in. And actually, I can't presume that other service providers did not jump in. They did jump in. Somehow, it has been a boys with toys approach.
Yeah.
Where I want to see my data center. I want to have people visit my data center over and over again because that's what I believe in. That's my strength. How do you suppose this culture would change?
I think the only way this culture would change is, again, there has to be a real cost-benefit analysis around outsourcing, clearly showing what you can and cannot do. And the other thing I think you will see happening a lot more is, as we have, even as consumers, become used to these alternate channels which are available 24/7, and there is increasing pressure, for example, to meet that SLA of 99.99% time, which perhaps some banks do today, some don't, depending on how they are hosted and who they are. When there's increasing pressure there, probably if a service provider came in and said, I guarantee you whatever 99.998% SLA, here's the cost benefit analysis around it, here's how much money you can save, and here's all of the headache that you can save, potentially you could see sort of the culture change. But again, I think it comes down to money. If you can't show that there's a real economic benefit around it, you obviously you're not going to get through to the CEO, and you're definitely not getting through to the CIO.
And that's the problem, because the CEO would not really do this on their own. The CEO would give this idea to somebody. Who is that somebody? It's definitely not the CIO, because CIO is managing your branch uptime.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, even the uptime, I don't even think Pakistan right now needs 99.9% uptime in terms of the banking industry, and no bank is probably doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that systems go down, but there is a manual process which prevails, so the customer is not waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been there because we actually came from the paper industry.
Yeah.
So we knew our basis. So I don't know. I mean, so on a closing remark, top 3 things that you would recommend to facelift financial services in Pakistan.
Mobile banking, I think open up more channels. Mobile banking, being something that's I think definitely it's right up there. I think being more innovative on the products that they're offering, even now with all of the technology and the facility that we have around these platforms. I don't think we've really seen innovative products, coming in and sort of attracting the consumer. It's the same set of products I think you see being advertised everywhere, and getting the sort of the discipline and the process together to really be able to cross-sell. When you have this expensive branch sitting wherever in the larger metro areas, you have the staff sitting on those branches, so you've definitely got the human element. But just having that discipline and sort of process around being able to cross-sell. I walk in, you're able to offer me 3 things that I may potentially want to buy.
Okay, well, that's a wrap.